My name is Jessica. I'm 32 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had the perfect marriage. My husband Kevin and I have been together for 5 years, building what I believed was an honest relationship. I decided to cut my business trip short to surprise him, something I thought would bring joy to both of us. As I turned onto our street, my heart fluttered with excitement, but that quickly changed when I saw several unfamiliar cars parked outside our house. The garden, normally pristine and simple, was decorated with blue and pink balloons. A banner hung across our porch reading, "Welcome, our little miracle." Confusion turned to dread as I slowly realized what I was seeing. If you're watching this from your home, hit like and subscribe as I take you through the day I discovered what my husband had been hiding behind my back. Kevin and I met 6 years ago at my friend Amber's art gallery opening. I wasn't even planning to attend that night, but my coworker Chloe convinced me to go after our marketing team finished a major campaign. I remember standing alone by a particularly abstract painting, pretending to understand it, when Kevin approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "It looks like a duck riding a bicycle, right?" he whispered, and I couldn't help but laugh. He had this way of making me feel comfortable immediately, with his warm brown eyes and genuine smile. At that point in my life, I was completely focused on my career. I had worked my way up from junior copywriter to senior marketing strategist at Wilson & Hayes, a boutique agency in Chicago. My days were filled with client meetings, creative briefs, and late nights perfecting campaigns. Romance wasn't even on my radar. But Kevin changed that with his persistence and charm. Our first date was at a tiny Italian restaurant where the owner knew him by name. By our third date, I was already imagining a future together. There was something so secure about his presence, so certain. He worked as an architectural designer for a well-respected firm, creating modern homes for wealthy clients. We bonded over our creative professions and ambitious dreams. After dating for a year, Kevin proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. It was simple and perfect, just the 2 of us on the beach at sunset. 6 months later, we were married in a small ceremony with just 30 guests. Everyone commented on how perfect we were together, how our energies complemented each other. I was the spontaneous, creative one. He was the planner, the one who kept us grounded. We bought our house in a quiet suburban neighborhood 3 years ago. It was a fixer-upper that Kevin was excited to transform. Together we painted walls, replaced floors, and planted a garden. Every corner of that house held memories of laughter and love. It became our sanctuary from our busy professional lives. About 2 years ago, we decided to start trying for a baby. I was 30, established in my career, and Kevin had just turned 34. It seemed like the perfect time. We were naive then, thinking it would happen quickly. After 6 months of trying naturally with no success, we consulted a fertility specialist. Dr. Natalie Harris became a regular presence in our lives as we navigated the complicated world of fertility treatments. The next year and a half was a roller coaster of emotions. I underwent numerous tests, took hormones that made me feel like a stranger in my own body, and endured 3 rounds of IVF. Each failure hit harder than the last. The most devastating was our 3rd attempt, when we actually achieved pregnancy, only to lose it at 9 weeks. I still remember curling up in our bathroom, crying while Kevin held me. Both of us shattered. After that loss, Dr. Harris suggested we take a break. The emotional and physical toll was affecting my health, and even my work was suffering. We agreed to pause treatments for 6 months to heal and recenter ourselves. Kevin was supportive, assuring me that whether we had children or not, we would be okay. We even started discussing alternatives like adoption or surrogacy, but decided to wait before making any decisions. During this break, I threw myself back into work. When the opportunity came to lead a major marketing campaign for a client in San Francisco, I jumped at it. The project would require 3 weeks on site, the longest Kevin and I had been apart since getting married. He encouraged me to go, saying the space might be good for both of us after the intensity of the fertility treatments. The first 2 weeks in San Francisco were hectic but fulfilling. I called Kevin every night, telling him about the progress we were making and the challenges we were facing. He seemed distracted sometimes, but I attributed it to his own busy schedule at work. He mentioned his parents visiting, but didn't go into details. Then came the call that changed everything. My client decided to move in a different direction with the campaign, effectively cutting my trip short by a week. Instead of telling Kevin, I saw an opportunity to surprise him. I booked a flight home for the next day, imagining his face when I walked through the door unexpectedly. I thought about stopping for flowers or his favorite takeout. Never once did I imagine that I would be the one receiving a surprise. The flight from San Francisco to Chicago felt interminable. I'd splurged on a first-class ticket as a treat to myself after the disappointment of the campaign changing direction. As I sipped a complimentary glass of wine, I daydreamed about reconnecting with Kevin. 3 weeks apart had been longer than expected, and despite our nightly phone calls, I missed the physical presence of my husband, the comfort of our shared routines. When we finally landed, I felt a surge of excitement. I checked my phone as soon as it was allowed, finding 3 texts from friends I didn't normally hear from regularly. Angela, a colleague of Kevin's, had sent, "So thrilled for your family's news." Heather, who we sometimes met for dinner, wrote, "Just heard. Congratulations." The third was from Tyler, asking if we needed any baby furniture since his sister was getting rid of some. These messages confused me, but I didn't have time to dwell on them. I grabbed my luggage and found a taxi, giving the driver our address. As we drove through familiar neighborhoods, my anticipation grew. It was just past 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and I figured Kevin would be home working on house projects as he usually did on weekends. The first sign that something unusual was happening came when we turned onto our street. Cars lined both sides, some I recognized as belonging to friends and family, others completely unfamiliar. My taxi driver had to drop me half a block away because there was no space closer. "Looks like you're coming home to a party," he commented as he helped me with my suitcase. "Apparently so," I replied, confusion growing by the second. As I wheeled my luggage down the sidewalk, the decorations came into view. Our normally subdued craftsman home was transformed. Blue and pink balloons tied to the porch railings swayed in the gentle spring breeze. A large banner stretched across the front of the house, its message making my heart skip. "Welcome. Our little miracle." More decorations became visible as I got closer. Baby-themed cutouts taped to our windows. A stork lawn sign stuck into our front garden. Gift-wrapped packages piled near the door. It looked like a baby shower in full swing, but that made no sense. We had paused our fertility treatments. There was no baby to celebrate. I stopped at the edge of our property, unable to process what I was seeing. Through the front windows, I could make out figures moving around inside. There appeared to be at least 15 people in our living room. Music and laughter drifted out into the street. Instead of walking up to the door, I retreated to my car that had been parked in the airport long-term lot for 3 weeks. I sat inside, trying to make sense of the scene. Perhaps there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Kevin was hosting a shower for a friend or family member. But then why was our house the one decorated with the miracle banner? As I watched from my car, more guests arrived. I recognized Kevin's parents, Walter and Thelma, carrying what looked like a bassinet. They were followed by my best friend Stephanie, who had been my maid of honor at our wedding. She was balancing a cake box and a gift bag. Seeing her there increased my sense of betrayal. Whatever was happening, Stephanie was in on it. 20 minutes passed as I sat frozen in confusion. Then I noticed a woman I didn't recognize arriving. She appeared to be in her late 20s, with long auburn hair and a kind face. Most notably, she was very pregnant, her floral dress stretching over what looked like a 7 or 8-month belly. Kevin greeted her at the door with a hug that lingered too long, his hand resting briefly on her stomach before they went inside. The sight sent a chill through me. Was Kevin having an affair? Had he gotten another woman pregnant while we were struggling with fertility treatments? The thought was too painful to consider, yet what other explanation could there be? I felt sick to my stomach, lightheaded with shock. Part of me wanted to drive away, to pretend I hadn't seen any of this. But a stronger part knew I needed answers. Whatever was happening in my house, behind my back, I deserved to know the truth. I gave myself 5 minutes to calm down before approaching the house. My hands trembled as I reapplied my lipstick using the car mirror. A pointless gesture of normalcy in a situation that was anything but normal. With each step toward our front door, questions raced through my mind. Who was the pregnant woman? Why were all these people gathered without my knowledge? What exactly was Kevin celebrating? Rather than using the front entrance where I might be immediately spotted, I circled around to our side door that led into the kitchen. My key turned smoothly in the lock, and I slipped inside unnoticed. The kitchen was filled with catering supplies. A spread of finger foods and drinks laid out on our counters. A 3-tier cake sat in the center of our dining table, decorated with baby blocks and the words, "Baby Walters coming soon," in blue and pink frosting. Walters. Our last name. On a baby cake. The room seemed to spin around me. From the adjoining living room, I could hear animated conversations. Someone was discussing nursery colors. Another voice, which I recognized as Kevin's mother Thelma, was saying something about the surrogate being such a blessing. A male voice, probably Kevin's father Walter, responded with, "After all they've been through, they deserve this happiness." Surrogate? My mind raced to connect the dots. Was that pregnant woman carrying our baby? How was that possible without my knowledge or consent? Taking a deep breath, I stepped from the kitchen into the living room doorway. The chatter continued for a moment before someone noticed me. Then, like a wave, silence fell across the room as one by one faces turned toward me. I saw shock, confusion, and in some cases, guilt in their expressions. Kevin stood in the center of the room, a glass of champagne frozen halfway to his lips. His face drained of color. "Jessica," he said, my name coming out as barely a whisper. "You're home early." "Surprise," I said, my voice eerily calm despite the storm raging inside me. The pregnant woman I'd seen entering the house was seated in our favorite armchair, the one Kevin and I had spent weeks searching for at antique stores. She looked confused, glancing between Kevin and me with uncertainty. "What's going on here?" I asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Because it looks like a baby shower for a baby I didn't know existed." Kevin quickly set down his glass and moved toward me, attempting to steer me toward the hallway. "Let's talk about this privately, Jess." I shrugged off his hand. "No. Whatever is happening here involved all these people in our lives. They all know something I don't, apparently. So let's discuss it right here." My voice cracked slightly, but I held firm. The room was painfully silent. I recognized most of the faces staring back at me. Our friends Samuel and Ashley. Kevin's coworkers Brandon and Angela. My own friend Stephanie stood in the corner, her face flushed with shame. Kevin's parents looked uncomfortable but not surprised, confirming they were well aware of whatever secret was being kept. "Who is she?" I asked, pointing to the pregnant woman, who now looked mortified. Kevin cleared his throat. "This is Amanda. She's helping us." "Helping us how?" I pressed, though I already suspected the answer. "She's our surrogate," Kevin finally admitted. The word hit me like a physical blow. Surrogate. This woman was carrying a baby. Our baby. A baby I knew nothing about. "Is this some kind of joke?" I asked, looking around the room as if someone might jump up and shout surprise. "This is all an elaborate prank." But the serious, uncomfortable faces told me this was all too real. Amanda spoke up, her voice gentle. "I'm so sorry, I thought you knew. Kevin told me you were away on business, but that you were excited about the baby. I never would have agreed to this if I knew you weren't informed." I turned to Kevin, fury building inside me. "You told her I knew? You told everyone I knew about this? How is that even possible? We stopped fertility treatments. We don't have a surrogate." Kevin's face had transitioned from shock to a placating smile that made my skin crawl. "Jess, calm down. This was supposed to be a surprise for when you got back next week. I wanted to wait until everything was certain before telling you." "Certain? She looks about 7 months pregnant. How long has this been going on?" I demanded. The room grew even more uncomfortable as Kevin hesitated. Finally, his father spoke up. They found Amanda about 7 months ago. The baby is due in 7 weeks. 7 months. While I had been grieving our fertility struggles, going to therapy, focusing on healing, Kevin had been arranging a surrogate behind my back. 7 months of lies. 7 months of deception. How is this baby even possible? I asked, my mind still trying to process the logistics. We used all our viable embryos in the last round of IVF. Kevin's expression confirmed what I was beginning to suspect. Not all of them, he admitted. We had 2 viable embryos frozen that we didn't use. The revelation hit me like a truck. Not only had Kevin arranged a surrogate without my knowledge, but he had used our frozen embryos created from my eggs, without my consent. It was a violation so profound I could barely breathe. You used our embryos without telling me. My voice was barely audible, choked with disbelief and growing rage. The room around us seemed to fade away as I focused entirely on Kevin, waiting for an explanation that could somehow make this betrayal comprehensible. Kevin ran his hand through his hair. A nervous gesture I'd always found endearing before. Now it just seemed calculating, buying time to formulate his next lie. I was trying to protect you, Jess. After the last miscarriage. You were so devastated. I couldn't bear to see you go through another disappointment. Protect me? I repeated, incredulous. By making decisions about my body, my eggs. My potential child without my knowledge or consent. That's not protection, Kevin. That's control. Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat, both hands resting on her belly. I really did think you were on board with this, she said softly. Kevin showed me emails he said were from you, approving everything. The room spun around me. He forged emails from me? Kevin quickly interjected. I didn't forge anything. I just knew what you would say if you weren't so stressed about work and the failed IVF attempts. I was acting in our best interest. In your best interest. Our best interest would have been honesty, I snapped. How did this even happen? Who is Amanda? How did you find her? Kevin explained that Amanda was a family friend of his coworker Brandon. She had been a surrogate once before for another couple and had mentioned wanting to help someone else. Brandon had connected them during a company Christmas party last year, just weeks after our last failed IVF attempt. I talked to Dr. Harris, Kevin continued. She agreed that surrogacy might be our best option moving forward. Dr. Harris knew about this too. The betrayal deepened with each revelation. Our fertility doctor, who had guided us through our most vulnerable moments, had conspired with Kevin behind my back. She assumed you were part of the decision, Amanda interjected. Kevin always said we and us in the meetings. No one questioned that you were fully informed. I looked around the room at the faces of our friends and family. Did all of you know about this? While I was grieving, thinking we were taking a break from fertility treatments, you were all planning this baby shower. The uncomfortable silence was answer enough. Even Stephanie, my best friend since college, couldn't meet my eyes. I wanted to tell you, she finally said. But Kevin insisted it needed to be a surprise. He said you were focusing on your career right now and didn't want to be distracted by surrogate updates that might not work out. And none of you thought it was strange that I never mentioned this massive life change? That in all our conversations over the past 7 months, I never once talked about the baby we were expecting by a surrogate. My voice rose with each question. Kevin's mother Thelma stepped forward. Her expression a mixture of concern and defense of her son. Jessica, dear, try to understand. Kevin was trying to give you the baby you've always wanted without putting you through more heartache. Is that really so terrible? Yes, it is terrible, I responded, my composure finally breaking. This isn't about giving me what I want. This is about Kevin making unilateral decisions about our life, our future, our family. This is about lying to me, to all of you, for over half a year. Kevin moved closer, attempting to take my hand, which I quickly pulled away. The baby is due in 7 weeks, Jess. I was going to tell you when you got back from San Francisco. I had it all planned out. The nursery is already set up in the guest room. The nursery is set up. This was another shock. He had transformed part of our home without my knowledge. Yes, and wait until you see it. I used the design ideas you had pinned on your Pinterest board last year, Kevin said, as if this thoughtful touch somehow excused his deception. "You've been planning this shower for weeks." Brandon's wife Angela volunteered, seemingly trying to help. "Kevin wanted everything to be perfect for when you learned about the baby." I turned back to Amanda, who looked increasingly distressed by the unfolding drama. "Did you ever question why I wasn't at any of the appointments? Why I never contacted you directly?" Amanda's hand protectively covered her belly. "Kevin said you were extremely busy with work, traveling a lot. He showed me texts from you asking about how I was doing, but said you preferred him to handle the day-to-day communications." She paused, looking horrified. "Those weren't real texts from you, were they?" I shook my head, fighting back tears. "I never sent any texts. I never knew you existed until today." The full weight of Kevin's deception settled over the room. Some guests began gathering their things, sensing that the celebration had definitively ended. Others remained frozen in place, unsure of what to do or say. "I think everyone should leave," I said firmly, addressing the room. "This is between Kevin and me now." As people awkwardly filed out, offering murmured apologies and avoiding eye contact, I noticed Amanda struggling to rise from the armchair. I walked over to her, surprising myself with the calm in my voice when I spoke. "Please don't leave yet. You and I need to talk, but I need a moment with my husband first." Amanda nodded, sinking back into the chair. "Of course. I'm so sorry, Jessica. I would never have agreed to this if I'd known." When the last guest had departed, with only Amanda remaining in the living room and Kevin's parents waiting outside, I turned to face the man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. "Why?" I asked simply. "Why would you do this?" Kevin's expression changed, showing frustration rather than remorse. "Because you were falling apart after the last miscarriage. You weren't thinking clearly about our future. I had to take control of the situation." "Take control?" I repeated. "This wasn't yours to control. These were decisions we needed to make together." "I tried talking to you about surrogacy before," he countered. "You said you weren't ready, that you needed time. But time was running out, Jess. We're not getting any younger." I saw an opportunity with Amanda and I took it. Without asking me. Without my consent. My voice was steady now, cold with the realization that I was seeing Kevin clearly for the first time. "Did you ever stop to think that what you've done is not just dishonest, but potentially illegal? Using someone's genetic material without their consent is a crime, Kevin." His face paled slightly. "Don't be dramatic. We're married. Those embryos belong to both of us. That's not how it works, and you know it. Both parents need to consent to the use of frozen embryos." I was grateful now for all the legal paperwork we'd read during our IVF journey. "What you've done isn't just a betrayal of our marriage, it's a violation of my bodily autonomy." Kevin's expression hardened. "So what are you saying? You don't want the baby now? It's a little late for that, don't you think?" His dismissive tone made something snap inside me. "What I want," I said carefully, "is for you to understand what you've done. This isn't about whether I want the baby. This is about you making choices for me, lying to me. Manipulating everyone around us to hide your deception." I glanced toward the living room where Amanda waited, her presence a physical manifestation of Kevin's betrayal. "That baby is genetically half mine. A child I didn't consent to create at this time, but who exists nonetheless. I won't punish an innocent child for your actions. But I also won't pretend that what you've done is forgivable." I couldn't stay in that house a minute longer. The walls seemed to close in, every familiar corner now tainted by Kevin's deception. I grabbed my still-packed suitcase and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Kevin called after me. "We need to talk about this." "I can't talk to you right now," I replied without turning around. "I don't even know who you are anymore." I had a brief, awkward conversation with Amanda before leaving, exchanging phone numbers and promising to contact her the next day. Despite my anger, I couldn't blame her for the situation. She was as much a victim of Kevin's manipulation as I was. As I drove away from our neighborhood, my mind raced with fractured thoughts and emotions. Betrayal, violation, confusion, and underneath it all, a strange grief for the life I thought I had. I checked into the first decent hotel I found, a Marriott about 20 minutes from our house. As soon as the door closed behind me, I collapsed onto the bed and finally allowed myself to cry. The tears came in waves, sometimes quiet and steady, other times in gut-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Kevin, alternating between apologies and defenses of his actions. I silenced it without reading most of them. Around midnight, I finally called the one person I knew would understand, my sister Diana. She lived 5 hours away in Indianapolis, but as soon as she heard my broken voice, she promised to drive up first thing in the morning. "Just try to get some sleep," she urged. "Everything looks darker at night. We'll figure this out together tomorrow." Sleep was impossible. I lay awake replaying memories, searching for warning signs I might have missed. There had been small moments over the years, instances where Kevin made decisions without consulting me, times when he dismissed my opinions as emotional or impractical. But nothing that had prepared me for this level of deception. By morning, exhaustion had dulled the sharpest edges of my anger, leaving behind a hollow ache and newfound clarity. This wasn't just about the surrogate or the baby. It was about fundamental trust and respect, both of which Kevin had shattered. Diana arrived shortly after 11, sweeping into my hotel room with hugs and practical support. She ordered room service while I showered, and by the time I emerged, she had arranged a feast of comfort foods and was already making lists. "Okay, let's break this down," she said, her lawyer's mind organizing the chaos of my situation. "First, we need to understand your legal position regarding the baby and the surrogate arrangement. Second, we need to decide what you want to do about your marriage. Third, practical considerations like where you're going to stay." Her methodical approach was exactly what I needed. "I don't know what I want yet," I admitted. "Part of me wants to just walk away from all of it, from him. But there's an innocent child involved now, my biological child." Diana nodded, understanding the complexity. "You don't have to decide everything today. But you should talk to a lawyer as soon as possible about the surrogacy situation." As we talked, more messages from Kevin arrived. Screenshots of the nursery he'd decorated in our guest room. Financial statements showing the payments to Amanda and the fertility clinic. Details of the legal surrogacy contract he'd apparently signed using a power of attorney document I vaguely remembered signing years ago for our joint investments. Each new revelation increased my sense of violation. This wasn't just a split-second bad decision on Kevin's part. This was months of calculated deception, forged documents, and manipulated relationships. "Look at this," I showed Diana a text from Stephanie. "She says Kevin told everyone I was fully aware of the surrogacy, but wanted to keep it private because of our previous losses. He asked them all to respect my privacy by not bringing it up directly with me." "That's some elaborate gaslighting," Diana observed, her expression darkening. "He created a completely fictional narrative and got everyone to participate unknowingly." The more we uncovered, the clearer it became that Kevin's behavior went beyond a misguided attempt to spare me pain. This was about control. About making unilateral decisions for our family while creating the illusion of partnership. After lunch, I gathered my courage and returned to the house while Kevin was at work. I needed to see the nursery for myself, to gather important documents, and to start thinking about what came next. Opening the door to our former guest room felt like stepping into an alternate reality. The walls were painted a soft sage green, the color I had indeed once mentioned liking for a nursery. A white crib stood in the center, already made up with bedding adorned with woodland creatures. A changing table, rocking chair, and bookshelf completed the scene. It was beautiful, thoughtful, and utterly heartbreaking. In Kevin's home office, I found a folder labeled Baby Walters, containing all the documentation related to the surrogacy. Medical records showing the embryo transfer to Amanda 7 months ago. Legal papers with what appeared to be my forged signature. Financial statements showing withdrawals from our joint savings account to cover the substantial costs. Sitting at his desk, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, I finally checked the dozens of text messages he'd sent since yesterday. They followed a predictable pattern: initial apologies, then justifications. Then a subtle shift to making me the unreasonable one for being upset. The most recent one read, "I know you're angry now, but when you hold our baby, You'll understand why I did this. I was only thinking of our family's future. The audacity of that statement crystallized something inside me. This wasn't a man who had made a mistake. This was someone who fundamentally believed he had the right to make life-altering decisions for me without my input or consent. Someone who, even now, couldn't truly understand why his actions were wrong. As I was leaving, I noticed a wall calendar in the kitchen with Amanda's appointments marked regularly throughout the past months. Many of them coincided with my business trips or late work nights. Kevin had been scheduling these meetings specifically when he knew I wouldn't be around to discover them. The systematic nature of the deception made me physically ill. I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up, my body rejecting the reality I was being forced to accept. The next morning, armed with information and supported by Diana, I met with Janet Foster, a family law attorney specializing in reproductive law. Her downtown office provided a neutral, professional space to discuss the complicated legal situation I found myself in. This is certainly an unusual case, Janet said after reviewing the documents I'd brought. Legally, both genetic parents typically need to consent to the use of frozen embryos. The fact that your husband potentially forged your signature on consent forms is extremely serious. What does this mean for the baby? I asked, my hands protectively covering my stomach as if the child was somehow inside me rather than Amanda. The baby is biologically yours, regardless of the circumstances of conception. You have parental rights that would be extremely difficult to terminate, even if you wanted to. Janet adjusted her glasses. The more immediate issue is the fraud potentially committed by your husband. We discussed my options for nearly 2 hours. I could pursue criminal charges against Kevin for the forgery and unauthorized use of my genetic material. I could file for divorce immediately and seek full custody of the baby once born. Or I could attempt to salvage some form of co-parenting relationship, separate from our marriage. Take some time to consider what you want, Janet advised. In the meantime, I recommend documenting everything and ensuring your financial accounts are secured. My next step was reaching out to Amanda. We met at a quiet cafe, her advanced pregnancy drawing glances from other patrons. The conversation was uncomfortable but necessary. I want you to know that I don't blame you for any of this, I began. From what I understand, you thought you were helping a couple who both wanted this arrangement. Amanda nodded, relief visible on her face. I never would have agreed if I'd known the truth. Kevin showed me emails, texts, even a video he claimed was from you, thanking me for being your surrogate. I feel so violated knowing it was all fabricated. We talked for over an hour, getting to know each other under these strange circumstances. Amanda was a kindergarten teacher, divorced with one child of her own. She had become a surrogate out of a genuine desire to help others experience parenthood. What happens now? She asked, worry creasing her forehead. The baby is due in less than 2 months. I'm still figuring that out, I admitted. But I want you to know that I intend to be involved in this child's life. This baby is genetically mine, and despite the circumstances, I already feel a responsibility toward them. Amanda seemed relieved. I've been worried that you might reject the baby because of how this happened. I'm glad that's not the case. We exchanged contact information and agreed to stay in communication about the remainder of the pregnancy and birth plans. It was surreal. Planning for the arrival of a child I hadn't consented to create, but who was nonetheless mine. 3 days after discovering Kevin's deception, I finally felt ready to confront him properly. Diana insisted on being nearby, waiting in her car outside our house in case things escalated. With Janet's legal advice fresh in my mind and a small voice recorder in my pocket, I rang the doorbell of my own home. Kevin opened the door, looking haggard. He hadn't shaved, and his clothes were wrinkled as if he'd been sleeping in them. Jess, he said, relief evident in his voice. You came back. I knew you would once you had time to think. His assumption that I was returning to reconcile irritated me immediately. I'm here to talk, Kevin. That's all. Inside, the remnants of the baby shower had been cleared away, but the nursery door stood open, a pointed reminder of why we were in this situation. I want you to explain exactly what you did and why, I said, sitting across from him at our dining table. No justifications, no excuses. Just the truth. Kevin sighed, running his hands through his disheveled hair. After our last failed IVF attempt, when you were so devastated, I started looking into alternatives. When Brandon mentioned Amanda, it seemed like fate. She had been a successful surrogate before. She was healthy, and she was willing to help us. Help us, I repeated. But you never asked if that's what I wanted. Because I knew you weren't thinking clearly. Kevin's voice rose defensively. You were talking about giving up, about accepting childlessness. After everything we'd been through, all the money we'd spent, I couldn't let you make that decision while you were depressed. So you decided to make it for me. My voice was ice cold. You used our remaining embryos without my consent. You forged my signature on legal documents. You lied to everyone we know, creating an elaborate story about my knowledge and approval. Kevin had the audacity to look offended. I was trying to give us the family we always wanted. Yes, I took shortcuts with the paperwork, but I knew once the baby was born, you'd be grateful. Grateful. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You violated my reproductive autonomy, Kevin. You made decisions about my genetic material without my consent. In what world would I be grateful for that? The conversation deteriorated from there. Kevin alternated between defense and attack, suggesting I was overreacting. That my career focus had made me lose sight of our family goals. When I mentioned potential legal consequences, he became agitated. You wouldn't dare take legal action against your husband. The father of your child, he said, his voice taking on a threatening edge I'd never heard before. That's exactly the problem, Kevin. You stopped seeing me as your partner with equal say in our life decisions. You saw me as someone whose wishes could be overridden when inconvenient. When his parents called during our conversation, Kevin put them on speakerphone without warning me. Thelma immediately began trying to mediate, suggesting we both had valid perspectives and should compromise for the baby's sake. There's no compromising on consent, I said firmly. Kevin violated my trust in the most fundamental way possible. Walter, Kevin's father, joined in with his usual bluntness. Jessica, what's done is done. The baby is coming whether you approve of how it happened or not. Isn't it better to focus on being a family now? Their dismissal of the severity of Kevin's actions was the final confirmation I needed. This wasn't just about Kevin. It was about a family dynamic that normalized men making decisions for their wives. I ended the call and turned back to Kevin. I've consulted a lawyer, I told him. What you did wasn't just morally wrong, it was potentially criminal. Forging signatures on medical consent forms is fraud. Kevin's face contorted with anger. So that's how it's going to be? You're going to punish me legally for trying to give you a child. I'm going to hold you accountable for violating my rights, I corrected him. And I'm filing for divorce. The word hung in the air between us. Divorce. The end of what I had once thought was a perfect marriage. You're not thinking clearly, Kevin said, his tone condescending. This is just shock talking. In a few weeks when the baby comes, you'll feel differently. That's exactly the kind of dismissive attitude that got us here, I replied. You consistently believe you know better than I do what I want and need. That's not a partnership, Kevin. That's control. As our confrontation escalated, Kevin's true nature emerged more clearly than ever before. When he realized his usual tactics of manipulation weren't working, he became openly hostile, accusing me of being selfish, unstable, and putting my career above our family. No one will believe you, he eventually said. Everyone already thinks you knew about the surrogate. They'll think you're having some kind of breakdown if you claim otherwise now. It was this final attempt at gaslighting that cemented my decision. I stood up, my recorder having captured every damning word. I'm leaving, Kevin. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings and arrangements for the baby. As I walked out, Kevin called after me. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Jess. You're throwing away everything we built together. I turned back one last time. No, Kevin. You did that the moment you decided your wants were more important than my right to choose. 2 months later, I sat in a hospital waiting room, my heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Amanda had gone into labor 12 hours earlier, and the baby, my biological child, would be arriving soon. The past 2 months had been a whirlwind of legal meetings, therapy sessions, and difficult conversations. Kevin and I were in the middle of divorce proceedings, complicated by the imminent birth. Janet, my attorney, had crafted a temporary custody agreement that would go into effect immediately after the baby was born, giving us shared legal custody, but primary physical custody to me. Kevin had initially fought this arrangement viciously, but the recording of our confrontation, along with the evidence of forged documents, had given my case substantial leverage. Faced with the possibility of criminal charges for the forgeries, he had reluctantly agreed to the temporary arrangement. I had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment closer to my office, transforming the second bedroom into a nursery. Unlike the one Kevin had created, this one reflected my own vision, with yellows and greens and a star theme that felt hopeful. Diana had temporarily relocated to Chicago to help me prepare, both practically and emotionally. Therapy had become a lifeline during this period. Dr. Vanessa Taylor specialized in trauma and reproductive issues, helping me process not only Kevin's betrayal, but also my complicated feelings about becoming a mother under such unusual circumstances. It's normal to feel ambivalent, she had assured me during our last session. You're allowed to be angry about how this child was conceived while still wanting to be their mother. Now, as I waited for news of the birth, those conflicting emotions swirled within me. Kevin sat across the waiting room, his parents beside him, the gulf between us impossible to bridge. We had agreed, through our lawyers, to be civil during the birth for Amanda's sake and for our child. Amanda's sister Julia emerged from the delivery room, her face breaking into a smile. It's a girl. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Both Amanda and the baby are doing great. A daughter. I had a daughter. The reality of it washed over me in waves. Following the carefully negotiated birth plan, I was allowed to see the baby first, while Kevin waited his turn. When I entered the recovery room, Amanda looked exhausted but pleased. She's beautiful, she said, nodding toward the small bundle in the hospital bassinet. Would you like to hold her? The nurse carefully placed my daughter in my arms, and in that moment, everything changed. Her tiny face, eyes closed in sleep, showed hints of my features, my mother's nose, perhaps Kevin's chin. She was real, not an abstract concept or a source of conflict, but a complete person who needed love and protection. Hello, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I'm your mom. Despite the circumstances of her conception, despite the pain and betrayal that had preceded this moment, I felt an immediate, overwhelming connection to this small person we had created. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I would do anything to protect her, to give her the stable, loving home she deserved. The weeks that followed were a blur of newborn care, legal meetings, and establishing new routines. We named her Lily Diana Walters, one of the few decisions Kevin and I managed to make together without conflict. The temporary custody arrangement meant Lily stayed primarily with me, with Kevin having supervised visitation 3 times a week. Stephanie, my once best friend, had reached out repeatedly to apologize for her role in keeping Kevin's secret. After several heartfelt conversations, we were slowly rebuilding our friendship, though the trust would take longer to restore. She had become an unexpected source of support, often bringing meals or offering to watch Lily so I could shower or nap. Amanda remained part of our lives as well, visiting occasionally to check on Lily's progress. Her insight into newborn care proved invaluable, and I was grateful for her continued presence despite the awkward circumstances. Diana eventually returned to Indianapolis, but visited frequently. You're doing amazingly, she assured me during her last visit, watching as I confidently gave Lily her bath. I'm so proud of how you've handled all of this. Kevin, to my surprise, had begun therapy as well. Our interactions, while still tense, had become more focused on Lily's well-being rather than our conflict. During one visitation exchange, he had even apologized, not for the surrogacy itself, but for the way he had gone about it. I still believe I was giving us what we both wanted, he said, but I should have been honest with you. I see that now. It wasn't enough to repair our marriage, but it was a step toward the cooperative co-parenting relationship Lily would need. 6 months after Lily's birth, our divorce was finalized, with a detailed custody agreement that gave us joint legal custody and me primary physical custody. Kevin had visitation rights that would gradually increase as Lily grew older. The surrogacy fraud charges had been settled separately, with Kevin agreeing to extensive therapy and financial restitution. As I rocked Lily to sleep one evening in our apartment, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us here. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined my life taking this turn, my marriage ending, becoming a mother under such unusual circumstances. Yet here I was, stronger than I had ever been, more certain of my boundaries and values. The betrayal that had nearly broken me had ultimately revealed my resilience. I had learned to trust my instincts, to demand respect in my relationships, and to recognize when someone was trying to control rather than partner with me. Lily stirred in her sleep, her tiny hand clutching my finger. Despite everything, I couldn't regret her existence. She was innocent of the circumstances that brought her into the world, and she deserved all the love and stability I could provide. I had explained our unusual family situation to friends and colleagues as honestly as age-appropriate conversations would allow. Someday, when Lily was old enough, I would tell her the truth about her beginnings as well. Not to turn her against her father, but to ensure she grew up understanding the importance of consent, autonomy, and honest communication in relationships. My career had taken some unexpected turns as well. The experience had prompted me to reduce my travel schedule and focus on projects that allowed more flexibility. I had even started a support group for women navigating complex family formation situations, finding purpose in helping others facing similar challenges. As I placed Lily in her crib for the night, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. The path forward wouldn't always be easy, but it was mine to choose, with decisions made consciously and independently. Have you ever faced a betrayal that forced you to redefine your entire life? How did you find the strength to rebuild? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it helps someone feel less alone in their struggles.